the Vet Nation podcast. David Coker, president of the Fisher House, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit with us here at Vet Nation. I was thrilled when I got the phone call saying that you had accepted. Immediately went and kind of looked at your LinkedIn profile. We're not connected yet. We should be connected. But I am personally a huge fan, supporter, advocate for the Fisher House. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. You know, all too often, Fisher House is a best kept secret. And the thing that is so important is letting people know that there's a resource such as Fisher House to help them in their time of need. Because if it's one thing we know is that life's going to happen. And when it does, when you get that phone call, you know, you learn that somebody's wounded, ill, or injured, you just want to be there. And the military, the VA do a wonderful job of providing world-class health care. Having a place for families to stay is a little bit more of a challenge. And that's where we can come in and lend and assist.
Absolutely. You know, I don't want to be scripted on Vet Nation, and I really want to kind of get down to just real and tangible conversations, takeaways. I love that you just said about being prepared, that we can only be as prepared as we can be. And so for those moments, and the Fisher House being the best kept secret, it's something that I strive to do, especially given my background, military background, and now running a nonprofit myself and a for-profit. I always strive to make sure that we are aware further upstream of the resources that are available.
Well, and many times I'm retired Army, and one of the things as you go through the process when you're young, and you know, with deployment briefings, you may be told about a resource like Fisher House, but at that point you're invincible, and that's the mindset, and it doesn't really stick. And we always consider, and I can only speak for guys, we consider ourselves invincible until we're not.
I would say the same for us female warriors out there. We consider ourselves invincible until we're not. The military culture is one of strength and resiliency and adaptability. And you're right. We go through, whether it's those pre-deployment briefings, those post-deployment briefings, or we're getting out of the military and we're kind of looking at that transition aspect. Mm-hmm. And we're not focused at that time. It's going in one ear and out the other. And it's something I personally strive to instruct, again, further upstream, is that we need to be so aware of all of the resources that are out there. And it's always too late. And then it's a click of a button and you're going through a website that claims to have all the resources and you're searching mm-hmm. and seeking. And so I agree with you, hands down. Let's go back a little bit more, David. And first, tell us about your military experience. How long were you in, getting out, retiring? How long has it been? Just share a little bit about.
Oh, gosh. Well, it starts because I'm a military brat. My father was in the service. He joined the Army back in World War II. 42 to 77 was his career. And growing up military, you, of course, move around a good bit. I graduated from Heidelberg High over in Germany and went to school on a ROTC scholarship, and was fortunate enough to go into the Army as a medical service corps officer. I served for 15 years, and at that point, the Army was right-sizing. You know, the Berlin Wall had come down. It was 1993, 1994 timeframe, and the Army was drastically being reduced. I had just gotten my master's in healthcare, and the environment in military healthcare, that's right when managed care came into being. And what I saw was that in many respects, these companies were going to be managing healthcare in the future. You know, it transitioned from managed care to TRICARE today. Mm-hmm. And there are two major companies that help manage all the healthcare for the beneficiaries. Anyway, I got out in '94 thinking I was going to, actually, I put in my paperwork thinking I was going to work for one of those organizations. And then I learned there was an opportunity with Fisher House. And it is something that just has always been special to me, in part because um, when I was a young captain in Germany, I got a phone call and found out that my mother had cancer. And as they were going through that process, that was before there was ever anything called Fisher House. But my father served in the infantry and then the medical service corps. He happened to know the commander at Walter Reed. He had worked for him in his career. And he called him up and said, Lou, Virginia's got cancer. Um, who's got the best program? I'd really like to get a second opinion. And General Malone said, you know, Larry, we do. I'll help with making the appointments. There's only one condition. You're staying with me. And he opened up his quarters to my folks. And I know how much that meant to them to be able to be in a loving environment, to be supported by others, and to be able to take walks around the campus to discuss what the future held. And so when a Fisher House came to Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center, which was my last assignment, the first thing that happened is, number one, everybody thought the general was getting a new house because it's a nice big house.
Yes.
And when I learned that wasn't the case, it was going to be a Fisher House. The next question is, what is a Fisher House? And they told me, well, it's kind of like a Ronald McDonald House, but for the families being treated here at Fitzsimmons. And I remembered how important being in that kind of an environment, what it meant to my parents. And I went to the chief of staff and I said, hey, boss, I'd kind of like to help with this. Is that okay? And he essentially said, sure, knock yourself out. Go ahead. And I set up a local nonprofit. And the goal was to support that particular Fisher House. And I did my internet search, and I saw that in the state of Colorado, Fisher House Foundation was available. And I took the name, and a few months later, I got a phone call essentially saying, Fisher House Foundation, like the name. And it was from Mr. Fisher's people who were setting up a foundation to support the program as it grew. And I said, not a problem. I will change the name of my organization. Be glad to do that for you. And I did. And a couple of weeks later, got a letter saying, we'd like to start up a national foundation. If you know anybody interested, please have them submit their resume. And so, okay, time to I was zigging, time to zag. Put in my application, and I've been blessed to have worked for Fisher House now for 26 years. So I'm almost halfway done.
Almost not done. That's absolutely incredible. And David, as I think about this podcast and Vet Nation and what Vet Nation means to me personally and resonating with your story, you see kind of some of the accolades on the backs of my wall or on the sides, and my entire family has served as well. And so that was why I chose to serve. Very similar. Grew up in Japan, went to Yokota East High School, and so very similar paths as you look at. I served for 15 years in the Air Force, and I was medical, so on the enlisted side. And I found a passion. Although I was Air Force, I deployed with the Army as a medic, and found a lot of passion there. And that was with the discovery when I learned about the Fisher House and a lot of our wounded warriors. And so it's in my heart, it's in my bloodline, same thing. And I think that passion is what yields to such success for others, because they're able to come in and see that you embody everything that you're representing. So One, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's the side that people need to know. It's the story that resonates, and the storytelling, especially for a nonprofit, for a foundation, is critical for the success of the organization at large.
Yeah, and you know, in my military career, never had a bad assignment. Worked with the best people in the world, and working with Fisher House, I can continue to serve them. I just don't have to run 2 miles and do quite as many push-ups anymore. Uh, so it's no, it's a great way to touch lives and be able to continue to serve.
Absolutely. Personally, my doctoral research actually speaks to the acculturation, and how when we look at transitioning out of the military, how the word transition is actually such a small word. We're all facing a transition right now with this pandemic, but to look at acculturation and the social stigmas associated with acculturation, you just shared so much in a matter of a few minutes, that you still believe in service to this great nation. You found a way to continue serving. Your command supported your service. And again, with it being in your bloodline, that you're always finding a way to still serve a dominant culture, the dominant culture being the civilian culture. So I think that that story, and allowing others to view that story and know, here are two individuals that are constantly trying to find ways to continue their service and to be a part of a community at large, which is our military community. We still want one foot in, right?
Always.
Always. I joke, I love the commissary arrows, like going up and down and making sure that there's structure there. I like the structure.
They just put those there for the Air Force.
Yeah. Probably that's good. Although now I'm seeing my local grocery store has the arrows due to the pandemic, so that's a good sign. So tell us then a little bit about, for those who have no idea, I heard a little bit, the Fisher House is there for the families that need the support, need a place to stay. And so where are these locations? How do they access? Just, I guess, start from the very beginning about the Fisher House.
Well, if you think about what our mission is, it's to support the quality of life of our military and veterans families. And at the heart of the program, as of the end of this week, we'll have 90 Fisher houses. And the houses can accommodate anywhere between 7 and 21 families at a time. The average length of stay is 7 or 8 days for the houses, but the longest length of stay we've had is 4 years. When you go into a Fisher house, you are there until you have resolution, or you're ready for the next step. And in determining where we build, at first, the program comes from a remarkable couple, Zachary and Elizabeth Fisher. And, when they wanted to do something to make a difference, Zach actually called Admiral Trost. He was the chief of naval operations at the time. And there was a relationship there because Zach Fisher had turned the USS Intrepid into a world-class Sea Air Space Museum. As he was doing that, he always respected the military, but the relationship just got closer. And he called Admiral Trost, and he said, Admiral, I'd really like to do something that would be a blessing, not just to the Navy, but all the services. What do you need? Admiral Trost, being a wonderful leader, went to his staff and said, okay, guys, we have this offer. What do we say? And being a very smart leader, he went to his wife and he said, honey, I got this offer. What do you think? And she always remembered a medevac helicopter landing at Bethesda. And hospitals have their helipad, the gurney comes out, and after the gurney, there's a family carrying bags. And this is in Bethesda, Maryland. And Housing might be a little bit more expensive, hotels, than they are down in Houston,
Yes.
and not near as convenient. But it was just always on our heart. Where are these families going to stay? And so the answer came back to Zach. We need something like a Ronald McDonald House. And Zach said, I'm a builder. I can do that. And so he proffered two houses, one at Walter Reed Army Medical Center and one at the National Naval Medical Center at the time, which is now the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. And so as he was building those houses, he said, you know what? Maybe the Air Force needs one of these. And so we spoke with the Air Force, and they said, well, yes, we do, but we need ours in San Antonio, Texas. And three became five, became eight. And you know, the remarkable thing is Zach and Elizabeth wrote a personal check for the first 20 houses. And that's why the program carries the name. Originally, we were just supporting military locations. And then Zach received a letter from a nurse at the VA out at Stratton VA in Albany, New York. And she had read about what Fisher House was doing and said, you know, you're doing wonderful things for the military, but there's a tremendous need in the VA for something like this. And what better place than your home state? and and so Zach said, you know, that you won me over. We'll build there. And so that opened the door to getting into the VA health system. And the way I look at it, and I'm an Army guy, so I don't use many syllables and I try to keep things simple. But in the military health system, you save the life. In the VA health system, many times you give people back their lives with the level 1 polytrauma centers and the wonderful things they do. And so to be in both systems is a remarkable thing. It really makes us a part of the fabric of healthcare. And the military and VA do a great job of everything that they're authorized to do. But what they're authorized to do and what a family's needs are can be two different things. And so we focus on filling the gap. We've learned a lot from the people who've graced our houses. And so initially, we would build the house, we'd give it as a gift to the military or VA installation, and they would agree they would operate and maintain it in perpetuity. That lets us go and bless the next community. And one of the neat things, well, there are a lot of neat things,
There are.
which
There
is why I love my job. But the house has become a catalyst for support for those families staying there. And there's just a sense that develops within a house, the way the families support one another. They carry each other burdens. They share the joy. And, you know, when things got hot and heavy during the conflicts, you'd have amputees who were fresh out of the hospital, but they'd see somebody that might be 2-4 weeks further along, and that would give them a sense of hope, a sense of stability. And Fisher House became a place where you could just be a little bit stronger for the challenges that the next day would bring. You know, the most amazing thing for me is to meet the families we serve and to hear how important it is. When somebody walks through the door of a Fisher House, we simply want them to know that there are those who appreciate their service, who honor that service, and want to help them in their time of need.
Absolutely. It's a holistic health approach. It's the whole person concept and the whole family concept, which is why I love, you know, for those listening, if you have not visited a Fisher House and you're able and you're near a location, I can't stress enough. You know, typically, you know, you see David around the holidays, they kind of get packed and people will come in and support and give. And I'm always kind of on that other side of saying, well, how about it's Christmas in July, or it's September, and just because, let's go visit and take, a care package, some crayons, something, just to make someone smile within the house. But I love how you brought up, you've got the military healthcare system, you have the VA healthcare system, and that you guys are coming in and filling in the gaps. And the collaboration is absolutely key to success. We know that, being military, we have to collaborate. Within the military culture, we support our local communities. It's why we're voluntold to do things. Which leads to our volunteer efforts and our hearts and our service, for those of us that transition out. But I think that piece is so important, that all systems are speaking to each other. And I love how the Fisher House is coming in and filling those gaps. So I love the story of the Fisher House. I see how it's filling in the gaps, but then you even have within yourself the collaborative efforts of bringing in other local communities and entities within the Fisher House. Talk to me a little bit about that support structure and some of maybe your community partners.
Well, as we determine where to build, one of the things when you're a part of something that's pretty special, the last thing you want is for it to become a status symbol. And so as we were expanding the program, we make sure we work with the surgeons general on the military side to make sure, assess the priorities, make sure we're building in the right places. And then within the VA, when we asked them if they needed something like a Fisher House, they came back with a list of like 72 places. And we said, okay, we're good. We're not that good. Could you give us your top 10? And so we work with the secretary and his staff, and they give us their top 10 list, and I can handle 10. We prioritize, we build, and as the list goes down to just a couple, we say, okay, let's do another list. And being close enough for government work, they'll give us a list of 15.
Right.
And we work on those, and that way we know we're building in the right communities. And we have been blessed. In fact, it was Houston. When Zach first started building the houses, they were 5,000 square feet. They were pretty simple design, and it was the best house we could build for a budget. Mm-hmm. And when Zach passed, the foundation took over responsibility. We came to Houston, and Dr. DeBakey, Michael DeBakey, the heart surgeon, for whom now the VA Medical Center is named, was one of our advocates, one of our champions, as well as the head of the Texas Medical Center. And we went and they briefed me on the workload and saw everything that Houston was doing there at the VA. And I went to lunch with them and said, good news, bad news. The good news is you've certainly justified a Fisher House. The bad news is you've justified 2. And so their response was, okay, this is Texas, it's Houston, let's raise twice the money. And Dr. Winardi, who was the head of the Texas Medical Center, was our community champion. And in about 45 days, he called and raised enough money to build that second house. And we learned then that, if you have community groups involved, you can build more houses and you can build them faster. And so as we go and we look in these communities, we look for community champions who want to come in and make a difference. And we've been blessed to have organizations like USAA and Enterprise Holdings and family foundations who, once they experience and see the impact a Fisher House has in the community, they say, okay, where are we building next? And it's just a marvelous thing to be a part of.
Oh, it is, and it's so important. I look at My father's actually the director of veteran affairs for the city of Houston. And so we love the fact that, you know, we're the second largest veteran population in the nation. And that's only because LA, I know my father will argue all the time because they have a military installation. So he likes to claim first. And it's happening soon. And especially due to, you know, when you're looking at the transitioning population of, well, why Houston? Well, because you look at it, it's a mecca, it's a hub. And so you have the oil and gas, the energy, you know, the essential personnel per se, a lot of employment opportunities here.
Well,
So
you think about the Texas Medical Center. I think there's 62 different healthcare organizations that comprise it. And
mhm.
so many of the world class physicians and healthcare providers are also credentialed at that VA. And so they're getting the same care that they would get in the Texas Medical Center, but it's such a tremendous synergy. And so many people don't realize the role that the VA and military hospitals play in graduate medical education. I'll bet you 60 to 75% of the physicians in America have done a rotation through a VA or a military hospital.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I think that that's sadly the misnomer is when you look at what we do within the military, especially on the medical side. It's always been one of my you go to my LinkedIn account and people are always shocked by what I did while I did serve because I was 10 years logistics and then I was 5 years as a medic. And they think, well, there's medic isn't anywhere on your LinkedIn profile. And I think, well, why would it be? I was absolutely nothing on the outside. And you look at what we do within the medical facilities and the healthcare and the training is on the training trumps I would, you know, argue any day till I'm blue in the face, any training out there. And yet you look at still how we're trying to battle and bridge that gap. It's
Mm.
frustrating, but yes, we do it right. I can't stress it enough. And, you know, for those that do complain about the system, because we have those that complain about whether it's the military medical centers or it's the VA, I always say become part of the solution. And by becoming part of the solution, you need to enroll. You need to become a part of the system so that you can understand. You know, getting back to the mission of the Fisher House, I think it's so important when we look at transitioning personnel and some would say, well, you already have support or you have this medical facility, they can stay here. But like you said, the Fisher House provides an opportunity for the families to come together to embrace the suck together. That's what they'd say, right? To embrace it, to acknowledge it, to have a support structure around them. And I think that in a sense at the time is almost it it's holistic health. It's not just a band-aid. It's saying, look, we have you. We want you to be able to grow. And yes, you're going to leave here at some point, but that foundation of strength, of adaptability, of resiliency, there's no other organization out there that is doing that. And so from your standpoint, looking at that transitioning population and the impact you've seen, what would you add to that?
Oh gosh. Well, you know, if you think about it, the VA's role is to care for he or she who is born the battle.
Mhm.
And you know, it is the family that just needs to become a part of the healing process because the healthcare professionals are going to say, okay, if you want to get better, you need to do this and move your arm this way. And they look and they see that the patient can do it once and they say, okay, I've done my job, let's move on. It's that family member that's not going to have any mercy. They said, okay, you did it for him, you can do it for me. And the other part of that is for the patient, for them to be able to be focused on getting better. They need to be in a situation where they're not worried about where their family's staying, where they're not worried about the cost or the safety. I've had families who've come in and they stopped by the Walmart to buy a tent and a blanket because they didn't know if there was going to be a place to pitch a tent or if they needed a blanket, they were going to sleep in their car. They just knew they needed to be there. And one of the things we've learned from the people who've graced our houses are what those barriers are, what those other barriers getting there. Uh, Houston's a wonderful place, and they have world-class healthcare. But if you're coming from down in the valley, Weslaco area, it's 4 or 5 hour drive. And if you've got to be there for 6 to 8 weeks, I will never forget. It was one of my first visits to the original house there in Houston. And as I was meeting the guests, this one fella said, Mr. Coker, I just want to thank you for saving my life. And I said, excuse me, tell me more. And he said, well, I live down in the valley, and they told me I had cancer and I needed to come up to Houston for 6 or 8 weeks to get treatment. And I knew I couldn't afford to bring my wife. And I also knew I wasn't going to come without her. And so I was going to accept what time I had left with the family. And then I learned there was a Fisher House, and I could bring her and she could be a part of the recovery. And today we saw the doctor, and I'm done. I'm in remission, and we're going to be going home later today. And when you get to be a part of something like that, it's just special. But there are those who have to travel even further. I mean, if you think about bone marrow transplants, those are done only a few places. San Antonio is one of them, and people come from all over the country. Well, if you're somewhere for 6 or 8 weeks or even upwards of a year, every now and then you've got to go back home. And the cost of getting there becomes prohibitive. Right. So that's when we developed a program we call Hero Miles. And we use donated frequent flyer miles. And we've now provided almost 78,000 round-trip flights to bring family in to be with their loved one, or to give our military and veterans an opportunity to participate in another nonprofit's programs. If they have issues dealing with post-traumatic stress, there are great programs, but again, many times the barrier is the cost of getting there. So by using donated frequent flyer miles, we can eliminate that and make these other nonprofits more effective as well. And being a relatively smart Army guy, if it works for airlines, maybe it'll work for hotels. And so we've taken that and we've saved families $11 million over the cost of commercial lodging, because sometimes the right place to go might be someplace where we don't have a Fisher House yet. Mm-hmm. Or if you have a child dealing with a serious situation, the children's hospital isn't always convenient. And if you've got a child in the NICU or in intensive care, you've got to be right there. And in supporting the family, you just do what you can to put them in the right place, remembering that they've got to be there and they've got to be able to be a part.
It does. I mean, hands down, the family has got to be a part. So the Fisher House supports, just so we're crystal clear, who exactly does the Fisher House support, and how does one find out about how, if they are in a situation right now? It's better if we are aware further upstream, but if they're just finding out about the Fisher House, how do they reach out? Because it's not just the service member.
Well, and the best thing, and many times, when you get that call, your brain starts, it's almost like you're in space and everything's just moving around and you're not thinking quite as clearly as you did the day before. But the best thing to do is go to our website, which is fisherhouse.org. And there we have a listing of where all the houses are. We've got a listing of all our programs, and that's where people can get educated. And hopefully, if you type in helping military families, we should be one of the first things to come up, because again, they may not remember the name, but they'll remember you and the podcast. And there was something about helping military families, and we'll get there. And we also work closely with the chaplains, the social workers. Within 24 hours of being admitted, there's a discharge planning team that's already focusing on, okay, how are we going to get you support for when you're ready to be discharged? And as those people talk with the patients, with their families, they're going to learn what the issues are. And many times it's been one of the nurses on the ward who says, have you heard about Fisher House? And that's a great reference point as well. But ideally, when you learn you need to go some distance to a remote hospital for care, you'll know that there's the Fisher House to support you. And it's not unusual for people to have worked their way between 2 or 3 Fisher Houses, so that the Fisher House becomes a part of the continuum of care.
Right.
The folks who were evacuated might go to Landstuhl to be stabilized, and then back to Walter Reed. And because they have burns or are dealing with an amputation, many times they'd go to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio. And if they were from San Diego, they then would go off as they got better. You always want to get them closer to home so that they're more comfortable and so that it's easier for the family to be a part of the recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. So those that want to donate hotel points and airline points are able to do so through, and I think that is absolutely incredible. I know for personally myself running a nonprofit, I know those points have come into extreme value to be able to use, to be able to help a lot of service members that you would never think, they need to be sent here immediately. They need to be close to family and support. The Fisher House, so I love how you talk about from the beginning to the end. So again, it is a holistic health approach. Bringing in other entities. I know that you guys have vehicles that are donated, many different areas where we can donate and support. What about when you're looking at, because we're talking about the holistic approach and looking at what is the aftermath? So we're looking at the discharge. How do employers, how do other people that possibly want to start talking further upstream to say, okay, you're on a pathway to getting better. Let's now sit down and talk about your education, your finance, your vocation. Let's talk about life after the military. And how does the Fisher House handle that part?
Well, we're focused more on supporting them while they're receiving care. And we partner with other organizations that come in. We learned early on that you can't be all things to all people. And we try to maintain a purity of purpose, because if you try to be all things to all people, things start to get diluted and you don't do anything as well as you should.
Right.
And so at different locations, there's so many heroes in this process. We serve heroes. The people who support us and allow us to build are heroes. But the managers of a Fisher House are special people. And they're the house mom, the house dad. They're the translator, because just because your son or daughter is in the service doesn't mean you're familiar with the jargon. And so when they start saying, okay, if you just get to 2496, go over to the PSD, and we are experts at telling people things that the English language doesn't always translate well.
Right.
The managers have to be the translator. They're the ones, when you celebrate a birthday or an anniversary, help you get stabilized. They see how well people are facing the challenges. And if somebody needs a little bit more assistance, they can step in and say, let me help you with this. But the healthcare professionals who provide care really do a great job of bringing in the other partners who can help as they're getting ready to transition. And one of the things that we've been able to be a part of is adaptive sports, the Warrior Games, Invictus Games. And, you know, that is so important because what I would see when people were coming back, you know, initially, I think healthcare was focused on, okay, what is the right cocktail of drugs where they're comfortable? And they go through this phase where they're simply existing.
Yep.
And at some point, you need to start living again. And it's, be it sports, be it art, music, there's so many things that can be the catalyst to get people moving. But with sports, you can go around a track and it might take you 4 minutes the first time. The second time you can do it in 3.5. And that's, you can see your progress,
Yep.
you can see success, and that's encouragement. And that success just bleeds over into every other aspect of your life. And you become more successful in relationships and then your outlook and the way you can address the remaining challenges.
I couldn't agree more. It's something that I share with transitioning service members and veterans and spouses and caregivers all the time. You know, the very core values of the military that made us who we are those very values, the commitment to our communities, the PT, even though you joked earlier about not doing as many push-ups. It's important and it's a part of who we are. And I think that we think oftentimes, well, I'm transitioning out of the military, or I've gone through these, you know, these battle wounds, these scars, I'm dealing with all this stuff, and I'm just going to give up that part. That's not me. When it actually is a huge part of who we are. It's ingrained in us. So I love that the Fisher House is doing that. You know, I know from volunteering locally, whether it's in Houston or San Antonio when I'm there, that the house moms, the house dads, the managers are doing such an incredible job with bringing in local community partners to support all entities of those that are looking at the future, the pathways to success. So, you know, David, thank you for all of that. With final words, is there something final that you would like to share about the Fisher House that we didn't cover?
You know, the thing I appreciate, you know, you hear all the I guess cliches about
Rhetoric.
the 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 more you give, the more you get. And with Fisher House, it just really is true. You reach out thinking you're going to do something nice for somebody, and in normal times we have lots of volunteers. They'll come over and they'll cook a dinner, and they think they're doing something for the families in the house. But to see the way that the guests touch the lives of those who are volunteering, it's just an amazing thing to see. So thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about what we get to do at Fisher House. You know, I think in terms of our success, it's simply the people we serve. You know, the one thing that can unite this country is everybody feels a debt of gratitude and appreciation for the men and women who have served, and you know, they don't serve alone. The families serve by their side, and we bring all of it together for an opportunity to make a real difference in somebody's lives, and it will touch yours too.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's the sense of humanity that we all need right now. And I think that a lot of us might be missing it out there, missing the physical touch, the personal going and actually volunteering. But there are many things that we're able to do online via Zoom still. And so if you are near a local Fisher House, like David just said, from trying to not tear up, it truly does mean the world to me, David, that you said it's that touch of humanity, because right now, September 8th, 2020, we all need a little bit more love and respect. And there's no greater way to show love and respect than looking outside one's window and saying, how can I go out and embrace and support a worthy cause? So thank you for your time today. You've been absolutely incredible, and you're a blessing to so many. Thank you.
Well, thank you.